Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar. We are continuing in the FDOT Traffic Plan series. This week, we are going to be looking at what is now Chapter 9, lighting tools, and Chapter 10, which is another added chapter for labeling tools. And we're going to look at some CAD resources. What do we have in our workspace? Some cell libraries, what's on our menu. We're going to take a look at using the draw cell group by feature, draw cell by feature, as well as DNC Manager, looking in the lighting and the signalization categories. There's some things like conduit that there's only one pay item now. We don't have multiple pay items, so some of the items that you may need may be in a different section of the DNC Manager. It'll all be between lighting and signalization. And once we get through looking at getting lighting features placed into the plans using these tools, we'll take a look at the Plan View Labeler, which is a Geopack tool. You can build custom tools with this particular, custom labels with this particular tool. So we'll look at building some custom labels as well as placing those Plan View labels into our design file. A little bit of background, lighting, I'll be the first one to tell you, I could not sit down and do a lighting design. So generating the lighting design is the responsibility of the engineer, whoever is doing that. MicroStation and Geopack does not provide us tools with the actual design process. Currently, if you're working in-house with FDOT, we use the AGI 32 software. Some different resources, where might you find who does this design? Sometimes it's going to be, in-house or part of the design group. It might be a consultant. If you are not using AGI 32, make sure that whatever software that you're using, that it is compliant with what needs to be delivered to DOT. Sometimes it might be a power company or the lighting manufacturer, from what I'm told, may come up with the lighting design itself in order to get that information into our plans. Some CAD resources. I know with AGI 32, you can, once you've gotten your design, we can create a DXF file, which you can bring into MicroStation. Today we're going to look at referencing that file to our design. And it may be too that you are given reports. The important part as far as the CAD process that we're looking at here is that you have the spacing for the poles as well as offsets for those pole locations. And given that information, whether it's reports with station offsets or it's a DXF file, once we have that information, we can start looking at getting that into our design file for plans production purposes. Let's take a look at MicroStation. I have created already a design file. It's DSGNLT for lighting. I've attached to this file already. I have the alignment and the design from the roadway group. I have the signing and pavement markings, as well as the signalization. Signalization is important because they're also running conduit and lines so that we don't have conflicts there. So I've pulled that information and attached that to my design file. The topo is, if you look in the plans preparation manual, the topo is kind of optional. You would show it if you need it, make sure there isn't any conflicts, but you have to look at, I think it is chapter 25 in the plans preparation manual, tells you what is required in your plans. For the criteria for the design, you can look at chapter 7 in the PPM volume 1, as well as we have some design standards out there for our light poles, our high mast lighting, etc. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is I want to know, where are my poles? So I'm going to go in and attach the AGI 32 lighting DXF file that I have in the lighting directory of my project. Open that up. And it's going to tell me that this little DWG or DXF units dialog here, important thing to remember is to leave it at feet, because that is what we are using in our file. So we want that to match. So I'm going to leave that as survey feet and tell this OK. Then I get my reference dialog. I have two options here, a layout and a model. I'm going to select model, and I'm going to turn that and tell it OK. And notice, since I still have this open, that it's highlighting where all of my poles are. So if I zoom out, you can see that I've got poles on both sides of my road, and it goes all the way down to roughly 719. Yep, 719 is the last pole. So what is the best way to get our CAD cells into here? I'm going to start, and I'm going to give several different scenarios, different ways that you can use the tools. There's not a right or wrong. So I'm going to zoom into the beginning of the project right here at 701 to 703-ish. Okay, I've got poles on both sides of the road. In exercise 9.1, we are looking at using the draw cell group by feature. So let's get that tool opened. I can get to it from GeoPack, Road, and I can go into Plans Preparation, Draw Cell by Group by Feature. So I can get to either one of these tools from here. I can also get there if I go to Traffic Plans. It's not under Lighting in here under this task menu. For lighting, we have to open up the cell library or the web pages. But I can also come up here to Draw Cell Group that's underneath the signing and pavement markings. So I can click on Draw Cell Group from here. Doesn't really matter which way that we go. All right, so once I have this tool up, I'm going to be looking at placing these poles with this tool from 702 to 706, and I'm going to be placing them on the left side of the roadway. Under Feature Group, I need to make sure that I have the correct item selected. Basically, you want to click on the magnifying glass here. It takes you to select Design and Computation Pay Item. Go to, let's go down to Highway Lighting. And just to show you, under Highway Lighting, I didn't mean to click that one. We have light poles, luminaires, and load centers. So I can go to light poles. I want to go to light pole complete, furnish and install. We'll go to wind speed 150. And it doesn't matter which one that I select. You just want to select an item that's in the category that you want to use. Double click or click OK. And notice that when I did that, even though I selected 113, notice that this is still 111. So all that does is select a category that can be used to populate this drop down. The particular item that we use this time is the first one, so we're all good. If I needed a pole that was a different one, I need to make sure that I come back over here and I select the one that I want. So we're going to put in these 40-foot poles. And I need to make sure that I put in the offset. The offset for these poles in this particular design is 52 feet from the center line. All right, so once I have that set, then I need to go to Location. I want to set the option to chain, and I want to use the center line construction, which is down State Road 61 here. And I want to make sure that I get my chain set in here correct, or stationing. So I want to start at 702. 702. Didn't get enough zeros before I hit tab. The buffer distance, I leave this in here as 0. And then I want to end this at 706. Okay, typing's not my forte. 706 tab. All right, so 702 to 706 with the buffer distances left at 0. They are placed every 200 feet. I want to leave that alone. The angle I need for this is going to be 0. And we're going to change this to relative. Okay, so it'll be based on relative to the alignment. that I've selected, or the chain, or whatever it is that I choose, the element in the file. Justification on the cells is the center of the cell. That's the 200 feet from center to center. And we're going to use the origin cell. So the origin here, that's the origin of the cell, the upstream edge of the cell, or the downstream edge of the cell. So we're going to go center, center, in between all these poles. And once I have all of that set, I'm going to tell it to draw. And notice that it places all of my light poles that I needed in through here. Okay. I just clicked in the file, accepted that placement. And actually, there's a little bit more. I want to go ahead and place these poles on the other side. So from 701, 703, and 705, all of these are before I get to the curve. Okay, so you can see the arc that's in here. So it starts to go on a curve. So I'll show you in just a second why I've done it that way. So let's go ahead and place our poles on the other side. There's a couple of ways I can do this. I can change the stationing to 701 to 705. I can come in here, and also the other option is I can give it a buffer distance. So I want it to be minus 100 feet from 702, and then minus 100 feet back is where I want to stop for my buffer distances. So I can do it either way, change the stationing or change my buffer distances. And I think I may have changed my angle. We'll find out in about 2 seconds. Click draw. See how they're placed on they're facing the wrong direction? Okay, they're all right when they're over here, but over here it's wrong. So I need to flip those around. So we're going to change the angle to 180. And now they're facing the right way, but notice that this one didn't come in right. That should have worked. Oh, I know why it didn't work. That needed to be 100 feet. There. Now it's not trying to place one over there. All right, so click in the file, accept it. Once you notice that as I'm going, if things aren't looking right before I accept it in the file, I can make changes in the dialog before I actually accept it, and it'll change things as I go. Okay, so there's my tangent section for the beginning. Let's take a look at this curve in here. And just so that you can see what's going on and why I'm showing you different ways to do this, I think it's 714. All right, so through this curve in here, if I were to use this tool, I'm going to set this back to 0 and 0. And let's go for the north side of the road. And I accept that. Okay, so I try to place these in here across the top. I want to show you something. It has a slight, I'll call it a bug. Notice that it's not placing my poles in the correct location. And it has to do with the distance. It's measuring the distance from here to here, but we're 52 feet out away from the center line. So it's not giving me the correct placement. It's 52. I need it to be 52 feet out from the actual station mark. So using this tool to go through your curves is not going to work for you. All right, so I'm going to right click to cancel that, and I'm going to close this tool down. I'm going to show you another way to do this. Actually, I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. One way is to use the draw cell by feature, not group. So let's go to Geopack, Road, Plans Preparation, Draw Cell by Feature. Okay, so it brings this tool up. I have the right pole or right item in the DNC selected for my pole. I'm going to put it on an element, that chain, centerline construction. My angle is going to be 0. I'm going to leave it to relative, and I'm going to place these one at a time. So I'm going to start at 708. I'm going to tell it to draw. And notice in here that when I draw this, see how it's kind of hard to see, but as I move my cursor, it's trying to place it at the angle from my alignment, but because my alignment, my curve is, the distance is changing, it's changing that angle. So once I place it, I hit draw, I accept the placement, then I have to tell it, basically, give it another data point. I'm going to snap to the end of my tick mark so that I get it to line up perpendicular to my alignment at that station, right? And then I'm going to right click to get out of that tool. So basically what I'm doing, let's do this again, set my station, 710, I'm going to click draw, and then I'm going to snap to 710 and place it, right click. I need one at 712, draw, snap, accept, done. Doesn't take long. Usually our curves aren't too long. And I'm going to draw that one in, snap to, all right, so now I have them on this side of the road. So let's go back up here to 707. It's not quite as easy to use this tool to be as exacting if I use this. So let's take a look at 707, and I click draw. Oh, need to fix that angle again. 180. Oh, it didn't accept my 180. Get out of that. 180, enter. Draw. Okay. See, it's still trying to do the same thing, but what happens when I go to snap to this tick mark? It pops that cell on the other side of the road. I have another way to do this. Actually, I'm going to leave draw self by feature up. I'm going to leave that tool up. Then there's another tool that I can do to help me out here. If I go to Geopack Road, Plans Preparation, DP Station Offset. Yep. So DP Station Offset is a Geopack tool. It's been around long as I've been in design, and that's been almost 20 years now. Basically, all I need to do with the DP Station Offset is that it allows me to place a data point. I'm not actually drawing anything with it, but it allows me to be very exacting in my data points. So I can select the GPK or job file, okay, set my chain, set the station that I want, 707, the offset that I want, and this tool is very particular, okay? If I say 52, with like over here I said 52, but depending on when I move my cursor on each side, it'll flip it from one side of my alignment to the other. This tool, if you say 52, it's going to always be on the right. If I would need something on the left, I would need to put a negative 52. The other thing that I want to put in here is this options that I have in here for tangent plus 180, radial plus 180, or tangent or radial. If I say tangent, it's going to place it perpendicular to my alignment. Okay, if I say radial, it's going to place it parallel to my alignment. And then I can tell it, basically I'm flipping the direction by either using just tangent or tangent plus 180. Well, I needed the 180, so I'm going to say tangent plus 180, and I'm going to lock this angle, and I'm going to click draw, and then I'm going to data point. And notice it's in here, actually, data point, and accept it. Okay, so it locks the angle that I need. I can also go in here, I can close this because it's still wanting me to try to, if you notice, it's try to set that angle with the draw feature. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to open up DNC Manager. And I got to that from the Quantities task menu. You can also get to that by going to Geopack Road, Plans Preparation, or actually it's not under Win, it's actually out. Geopack Road, DNC Manager, or you could also get it from the Road Toolbox. All right, with DNC Manager, I'm going to select that particular item. It wants me to place one in here, and the reason I went ahead and place it is so that I'm not going to place the file, I'm going to just right click to get out of that. But if I bring up my Draw Cell tool, okay, it wants me to place it. All right, it never does that. It's stuck on a data point within the tool. I'm just going to, within the DNC, let's delete that. And let's go back over here to Place Cell. I want to make sure that I've got the correct cell selected in here, which is the pole LUM for luminaire. So it's a light pole. Let me redo this one more time. I'm going to delete this out of here, and I'm going to go to Place Cell. And if I notice it's trying to place it in this other direction, now if I hit data point and I have all of these things set and I hit DP, it places it at exactly the right place that I need it to be. Okay, and I don't have to click anymore. That placed that cell. And then I can go to 709. Data point, I'm going to tab out of that field, and then data point, it places the cell. Yeah, you have to go in here and you've got to look at, redoing the numbers every time. It doesn't do all of them at one time, but it is, as you go around these curves, this is probably the best way to get these in here. So now I have all of my light poles up to that point. I could then have a few more light poles that are sitting out here on tangents. I can do this any way that I want to. I can continue. I could place them using this tool since I already have it open. DP station offset, I could put one at 17. There's not one at 15 because it's an intersection. And like I said, it's placing them at that exact offset. So if I wanted to place one at 716 and 718, I would need to come in here and put a minus 52 and change this to tangent and data point, and change it to 718 and data point. Easy enough, right? Okay, so now I've got all of my light poles placed, I think. And you can quickly check and see if you wanted to bring up your reference dialog and have that reference selected and make sure you've set this to highlight. You can actually look in here. I placed one in the wrong place. And oh, I missed one. So it's real easy to see if you've missed anything. I'm going to go to my cell again, just real quick. Put one in here. That's 719, and it's at 52, and plus 180, data point, and now I have that pole. So now that's an easy, quick look. Did I get all the poles according to the design? Yes, I did. Okay. So that took us through exercises 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3. 9.4 talks about pole boxes. And in doing this chapter, I've looked at multiple projects, lighting components, and honestly, there's not a lot of consistency. I know that there are a lot of groups that apparently you guys are, whether they're for special poles or I'm not sure exactly your reasoning, but I know that there are special cells that you guys have developed on your own, and some of the, basically it looks like a block for the concrete slab that is around the pole. It looks like some of them I've seen it even looks like it includes the pole box into that. Our cells, at once upon a time, we did have all of our light cells for the light poles. It included where it would calculate for a pole box. It no longer does that. So if I right click in here and I look at modifying items, I have no ad hocs on these light poles. So I need to place my pull boxes where they need to go. Next thing that we need to really look at is, what do I have in here? You know, I don't have pull boxes under highway lighting, so I need to find those pull boxes. I know where they are, but if say you didn't, or you didn't remember exactly where something is, you can go into the edit menu and go to find, and in here put in, you know, pull box or pull or wherever. It didn't find anything from highway lighting and below. It'll ask you, did you want to start at the beginning? Say yes. And it took me to the pull and junction boxes. So this is where I need to go. I'm going to go to pull and splice boxes. And in this particular scenario, we're going to use the small 13 by 24. It's looking for an angle. I just double clicked on the item. And I can set that angle using 2 points. I can use anything that I want to, an element along the edge of pavement, wherever. I'm going to use the stationing in here. So I'm going to snap to 701 and snap to 702. It sets my angle, and now I have a pull box on my cursor. And now I can start setting pull boxes. My understanding is that these the pull boxes are there, and you need to have a pull box somewhere close to your light poles so that you have all of the conductors are going to run through the conduit, through these pull boxes, and then at the pull box it's going to move from, you know, you've got, I think, basically 3 lines, 3 conductors that goes from the pull box out to the pole. So I'm going to place a pull box basically in here next to each of these poles, somewhere close. It may be right here, wherever it needs to be. Okay, I'm just going to place some. I'm going to place one on each side. Distances, I'm not real sure how far this needs to be, but I'm just basically showing how do I get it in the plans. So I'm going to place a couple pull boxes here, and I'll place another pull box here by this light pole. Okay, and one more. We'll place one here. All right, how you get these into the design file, it's up to you. If you know station offsets, you can use the draw self group by feature. You can just use the DNC. I recommend that you use either the DNC or one of the draw cell by feature tools so that when you place them, they're tagged so that you can automate the quantity. It'll count however many on a sheet for you. Once I have those in, the next thing that I need is conduit. Conduit is also in the signalization category. So conduit, we have different options. And I'm going to set my snap. I've got it over here on the right. I'm going to set that to midpoint. And that way I can take it from the box, actually from the box to the pole, and then from the pull box to pull box, from this pull box to this pole, down to this one, and I have a driveway. So far I've been using open trench. It's out behind the back of a sidewalk. If it's new construction, you may not need this. They may place this before you start constructing, you know, the driveway. All right, so it could still possibly be open trench, but if this was an existing driveway in here that maybe we're just reconstructing it or whatever, you might have to either jack and bore or directional bore. So I'll use the directional bore in order to place it underneath, and this will, by using the different items and just placing this in here by hand, I'm ensuring that I'm getting the right amount of conduit to be calculated with the right pay items. And then I would just come in here and do this. So in essence, what I've got here is I've placed conduit, I've placed pull boxes, there's load centers, we have under lighting, we've got the load centers set up in here. So wherever that load center would need to be, electrical service, you may need another pole for the electrical service. Whatever those things are and wherever they need to be in the file, we do have items set up between the signalization, the electrical services under signalization, and so here's our power service and the wire. So wherever it needs to be, it may be down here by the intersection, but we have the tools there for you. And like I said, you've now got experience, you know what tools are out there in order to help make this a faster process of getting it from however it's been designed, getting it into your set of plans and into your design files so that we can do quantities, we can clip our sheets, we can have all of it like it needs to be. That's pretty much it for Chapter 9 with the lighting tools. How do you quantify or draw the lighting conductors? Up until this release, I actually had an item in here, a whole category, under highway lighting for the conductors. And I wound up pulling that out because I realized that in order for that to truly work like it needed to do, you guys would wind up having to draw your conductor lines in multiple times. In this scenario, and we'll just use these 3 poles right here. You'll have your conductors coming to this pole box from wherever your power source is, and say these 3 poles are all on a circuit. The way that this needs to be calculated, and that is per conductor for the length of the conductor. So I can't necessarily use the conduit. So I've got 1, 2, 3 poles. These 3 poles each, so when it gets to the pole box, there's going to be 3 lines that are going to come out for this particular one. So I've got 3, 6, 9. So as I come up to this pole box, I have 9 lines at least, and I'm going to have 3 that are going to drop out to go to this pole. When these 3 lines that drop out to go to this pole, per line, I need 8 feet added at this pole box. I also need another 8 feet at this light pole. These are not exact numbers. If you read the basis of estimates, this is a kind of a compromise. You need extra line in order to make these connections. Giving you 8 feet at the pole box and 8 feet at the pole gives you that extra length in order to connect these lines in. But I still have, at this point, I have 9 lines. This one has 3. Then maybe these 3 drop off, and then say this line has 6. And maybe that it goes from the pole back into here to connect and complete, I don't know. So maybe it is 9 lines, but the point is that I have multiple lines per circuit, and I've got to drop these things out and include that 8 feet. It's almost easier for you guys to, you don't have to draw the conductor in there, you just need to label that that conduit has that conductor and then do the math. If I've got 200 foot of conduit running from one to the other, this pole box to this pole box, it's 200 feet times 9, and then you have to add for however many are coming out an extra 8 feet. While talking with Chester Henson, he's my go-to guy, we were in a meeting and we were discussing how I could automate this for you, and it just really became complicated. If I can find an easy way to get something in here for you guys to do that, I will. Hopefully it'll be in the next release if I can. But for the time being, I have completely taken the conductors out, and you guys are figuring out what that quantity is. You can take that quantity and add it to DNC or Quantity Manager in order to get it to automate with the tab sheet. So that is there. I did have another question come in, and I'm going to have to tell you that it's asking about differences between a 2-inch C and a 3-inch C. Honestly, don't know what the difference is between those two. Give me a call. Let me research exactly how that pay item needs to work, if there is a difference, or if it's basically what I said, and it's just a matter of labeling. I think it's just a matter of labeling what size, and actually the conductors do have, I think it's ranges of sizes. So again, calculations, you guys give me a call and I can help you work through that. So we're talking about labeling. So let's go ahead and move into Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is for the labeling tools. I'm going to close DNC Manager, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the labeling tools. There's a couple of ways to get to this tool. You can get to it from the Road toolbox. You can get to it from GeoPack Road, and I could come down here to Plans Preparation, Plan View Labeling, and open up the dialog. We will go through and we'll look at the menu options, styles, style file, that's like your basic file menu. I've got the options to open, to save, create a new one, so I can save or save as. Notice that some of these are highlighted and work, some of them are ghosted out. I'm going to go ahead and save this out since I know I'm going to be creating custom styles. I'm going to click on Save As, and I want to save this back to my project SYMB directory, and you can see I've already done this. Okay, I need to make sure that when I open up this labeler, I'm going to hit cancel here, that when I open it up, it'll give me the path or part of the path. So if I see SYMB, I know I'm working with my project LSF file, and it's basically a library of label styles. Once I've done that, I've also got, I go to different options. We can minimize the dialog whenever you're placing a label. I can, if I was in a plan sheet where I've clipped and rotated reference, it will tell it to use the reference file coordinates to actually place a label. Because normally you can't get those coordinates because they're not the same when I rotate my references when I'm clipping. I can use the data point element association, which is typically toggled on, and we leave toggled on. Label tools, that opens up this tools control dialog box where it gives me a lot of different options down here. Editing labels that I've already placed, that's part of this toolbox down here. Scale, I can change the scale. When I go into custom and I want to create a custom style, I want to make sure that I set it at 1. Basically, I'm going to place everything at a scale of 1, and then later when I go to place it, I can change the scale and it'll do all the math for me to take it from a 1 to a 40 to a 50 or whatever scale that I may need it to be at. So typically, I always create scales at a scale of 1. And tools, we've got 3 tools in here. Label Updater. That's where I can update my labels. I can label multiple things at one time using selection sets, and I can have some preferences. How do I want to show things like bearing, distance, if I tell it to use it, elevations, areas, how do I want different preferences set up? So I can do that. Actually, turn that back off because I have nothing in there. So that's the basic file menus. All right. Most of the time when you come in here, you probably won't use much of these other than to maybe open up this control toolbox and changing the scale. All right. I have 6 different tabs that work together to define how I want my label to look. So I've got my text where I set what type of text is going to go into my label. The parameters tab defines the symbology and the text preferences. My shapes determines if I want to place a shape around my text and how do I want it to look. I can set symbology and an offset. Leader tells me if I want to have a leader line or not. If I tell it no leader, it won't place anything. Rotate, how do I want to rotate my label? And last but not least is my Styles tab. Styles we have for you from the FDOT workspace. We have some roadway labels set up. We also have some traffic plans labels set up. And I'm going to actually delete that so we can go back through this again. So underneath traffic plans, you'll notice that we have, and there's not a whole lot I can do about this preview. Kind of acts a little wacky sometimes, but you can see a preview of the label depending on what it is, 6-inch white, 24-inch white. So we do have some in here for you to get started, okay? Basically, this is kind of the heart of it. First thing that I want to do under here is I'm going to go ahead and create a new style category. So I have options if I have the category selected to copy and paste a style item. I can rename a style category. I can go in and create a new style category, delete style categories, or refresh the list. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. It opens up the create category, which is lighting, and I'm going to tell it OK. Whichever one, actually I might cancel. If I hit and then accept it and tell it OK, then it would place it inside this traffic plans. If I close it and tell it I want a new category, it's going to place it below it. This works a lot like, it's still stuck it below it. I would have to select f.labels to get it into, let's do that. If I have f.labels highlighted, it will place it underneath it. There it goes. All right, so now I have lighting, but there's nothing here. The basic workflow for creating a label is that I've got to go through these 5 tabs first, set my labels up exactly like I want them, place the label, and I want to place the label somewhere close. We're going to use this pole here. You want to zoom in pretty close because I'm going to do this at a scale of 1. Place the label, and then once I've placed it, then and only then can I go in and set that new style and put it in here. Okay. If I do new style now, there's nothing set up and it's not going to have anything in it. Okay. So let's go back to the text parameters. And for lack of a better word, all of these will change, okay, for my tabs. But this section over here, I'm just going to call the label builder. It gives me a window. It also gives me some options to insert symbols, which it works, but not necessarily like we want it to necessarily. But I can add spaces, returns, I can clear the label, I can add the delimit. Basically, it puts a line in there for our leader lines, and then the option to place the label. So as I build the label, it's going to show up in this window here. So for this first one, and I'm going to show you several different ways of some different examples of labels that could be used not only for lighting but as other traffic plan disciplines as well. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to put on my cap lock. And I've seen several different versions of this label, by the way, as well. There's nothing out there it's not standardized on how this would look. All right, so on this label, we're going to put the poll number first, and I'm going to put an X out here just for a placeholder. Okay, and then I'm going to I want to put a line underneath that, so I'll put the delimit, and it takes me to the next line, and I'm going to tell it, okay, I want to see the station, and I want to click on space. I could use the space bar, but there's something about clicking the space before you put in a computed insert that once it's saved, if I want the station, when I grab that at a later time, to update when I select a station point, I need to use the actual space button instead of using the space bar on your keyboard. Okay, so for my station, I need to look over here and start looking at the text tab. My job number, make sure that it's set to the correct one. It's job 61, and I'm going to use the center line of construction. And my computed inserts has a lot of data that it can extract from whether it's a point. Okay, so I can give it a point out here, and I'm going to select the origin of this pole. Or I could come in here and select a microstation element, and that would give me a whole different set of intrinsic information that it knows about that particular element. For this one, we're going to use the point, and I'm going to go and click on station. I'm going to single click. If I double click, it's going to take it into my label builder window. All right, I want to make sure that the stationing is set with the correct, and the way that I've seen this for lighting, you guys don't put it out to the 2 digits, it's just whole numbers. So for my station, I'm going to take those off, so it'd be at station 701, and I'm going to double click it once I have this format right, the way that I want it. I'm going to click return, and I'm going to type in CKT period for your circuit, and then you'd have a circuit number, which is basically A-1, B-2, whatever, however your circuits are being labeled. Okay, so I have my label as I want it. Again, make sure that you're zoomed in pretty close. We're at a scale of 1. I need to go into my parameters tab. I'm going to double click on sample and make sure that my label is set the way that I want it to be. My text height is 0.07. That's a standard at a scale of 1. Make sure that I have the justification where I want it to be. Do I want it to be center, center? Do I want it to be left, right, top, bottom? So wherever I click in this dot, the little black sample box here, it's going to set the justification. I'm going to set it to left center. All right, make sure I have the font that I want to use. So in this case, I want to use F.bold, and I'm going to tell it OK. Okay. Typically, line spacing, I always put it in at whatever my text height is. That usually gives me pretty good spacing. You may want to bump it up if you're not getting enough spacing around the leader line in there. I have 4 options here for this symbology. If I wanted to, I can set it by some current symbology that I have. I can use some symbology that's set up in the DNC Manager, and we do have some under the text category. I can set it by an element that's in my file, or I can take and set all of the parameters. Okay. I can go in and right-click and set this as a dialog. This is the same as left-clicking. Set it by the current text settings that are active in your file. I can do it by an element. I can also copy and paste this. Most of the time, though, you're not going to be doing that because we have different levels set up for the text versus the leader lines. So, but you may want to make, if you had a shape, you may want to make the shape to be the same. So in that case, I could copy the symbology from here and paste it over here. Real quick and easy. Any of the symbology boxes that you see like this has that ability to copy and paste. All right, so I've set my text parameters. I'll go to shape. My shape, I don't want a shape. I don't want to have it to draw a box or anything around it. I do want a leader line. Okay, so I'm going to select 1-point leader because it's just simple. It will tag it. And I can have no terminator, or I could put this basically an open or closed one, which is it's defined by the tool. Or if I wanted to set an active terminator, I can click on AT, and then double clicking in that box will allow me to select from a list of cells. The list of cells comes from the active cell library that is attached. So if nothing comes up in the box like I just did, you would need to go to Element, Cells, and Attach. Our arrows are in the roadway cell library. So now I have different cells that I can use. Okay. I'm going to use the error terminator line, so I can double click and make, actually, let's see, terminator, make that active. I can close this, it's now attached, so it's okay, but then I can double click and you'll see that now it populates, and I want to use that one or that one. I always get this one backwards. I think it's this one that I want. One of them, the point, is where it goes in and attaches it to the end of the line, and the other one, it attaches it like back here to the end of the line, and so it overshoots where you're trying to place that terminator. All right, so in this case, I'm going to cancel this and use no terminator. Rotate, I'm going to use the current angle. I set it to 0, and then I'm going to place this label. Okay, so when I place the label, I'm going to accept it, and then it's going to give me an option, which direction or which end of this delimiter line am I placing the leader from. So just move your cursor in the direction that you want to connect it to the point and accept it. Okay, so that's at a scale of 1. All right, I've placed it. Now I can say, okay, now I want to create a new style. Give it a name. I'm going to call it light pole. And the style scale is, I created it at a scale of 1 so that it knows it's a scale of 1, and I'm going to tell it okay. If I were zoomed out and placed this, or I was real far away from this particular point where I wanted to place it, this becomes a blur and you can't even read it. That's why I say make sure you zoom in close so that this is still legible for you. Okay. And yes, it comes in backward. I don't know what is up with this thing doing that. And you may have just said, well, she said I couldn't read it. Well, there's 2 different options down here. I can do just this portion of it, or I can do the complete style. And the farther out I get, the longer this line, the leader line, will be, the less I can read. Okay. All right. So now I've placed it. I have a setting in here, so I can go in. I'm going to delete this temporary label that I placed. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to go to scale, change that scale. I'm going to change it to 50. And then I'm going to double click on light pole, or I can click on the blue check mark here. Okay, so it places it in there. I want to go back to your text tab, select the pole, and let's go to, actually I want to do by origin. And then this is going to be pole 1 and circuit A1. Okay, and tell it to place the label. Why is it tiny? It didn't hold that for some reason. All right, so it's at a 50 scale, and I'm going to place it, and it's in there. All right, so I'm going to go to pole 2, and just so that you can see, if I go to the data point location and select the pole, notice it went from 701 to 703, so it's reading that stationing in there for me as I move my points, right? So then I can place this label. Look, it needs to be pole 2, and it'd still be the same circuit. Place the information, and it's in there. Okay, so I could keep going down the list and label all of the poles, change the circuit numbers when I need to change the circuits, but that's one way to create it. Let me clear this, and let's look at doing another one real quick. I'm going to try really fast to get to at least another label or 2 in here. I know it's 10 o'clock and I appreciate your time, but I wanted to show you some different options. Another way to do this pole label would be to put in the station first. I'm going to hit space, then go to station, double click. And of course I would want to be zoomed in, just like I did in the first round, but I'm just showing you ways to build this particular label. Put in a comma, oops, space. Another thing that is in here is the offset. Okay, it shows it to me down at the bottom. I'll put that to 0, so it's 52, and double click it and put in apostrophe for the feet, space, and whether it's on the left or the right, and double click. All right, then I'm going to put in a space. There is a symbol in here for a center line. However, notice it comes in and it says, it gives you this crazy font information here. 8452. If I was in the labeler, like place text tool, this would work. But in the Geopack labeler, this is an old tool and it doesn't work. What I want to type in here, I'm trying to get the center line symbol, and I happen to know it's 161. Okay, so it is the backslash and then the character number. For those character numbers, I have them out there on the FDOT community site out there with Bentley Communities. We've got baseline, center line, milling line, property line. There's all kinds of them. The degree symbol. So I can get that information out there. If you can't find it on the community site, send me an email. I've got a document basically that has what character numbers you would need to place into this label in order to get those symbols to show up correctly. And then after I place that, I'm going to tell it it's on State Road 61. I'm going to place a delimit line, and underneath this I'm going to put the pole number, and let's just say we'll just do it to the same one, comma, and circuit. All right, and I'm placing this. You would put X's in here for anything that you wanted to do later, or you can just do it like this and just know that you've got to replace it if you create a style out of it. But then if I place this label, all the parameters would pretty much be the same as I had before for the rest of this. I could tell it to place the label and come in here and place it. Okay, so that's another way. Notice I got the center line in there. That's another way that you can create labels, putting your symbols in. Maybe I want to put in this conduit. Okay, I can do a couple of different things. I can create a label that simply has, I gotta remember what that p-atom number is. I think it's 2 space 11. I may be wrong. I can create one that has doesn't have to have computed inserts. Okay. I can do this by point or by element. Okay. And then once I have this in here, by putting the shape around it, when I place the label, it has a shape. Which end do I want it to connect from? And it'll connect to that element where I selected it. Maybe I want to create one that doesn't have a shape, but it tells me instead that I have, let me grab this element. Stop doing that. Let me clear that. Grab this element, and notice over here, let me select it, thank you. Notice that the information that I have in the computed inserts has changed, okay? So I could put a bearing on that line. I could put in the length. So let me just say, I'll put it this to 10th, and I can double click, okay, and I could put behind that linear feet conduit. Okay, if that's what I wanted my label to be. I can go over to shape, leave that as none, but under leader, maybe this time I want to use the active terminator, and maybe I want it to have a 2-point leader. Okay, my symbology is set. I can then go in here and place label. So I've got to tell it which end, and what this allows me to do is having 2 points, I can make this leader line on the end longer if I wanted to. Okay, and then it also has the terminator on the end with a nice pretty arrow. Okay, so those are all different combinations of common type of labels that we would put in the plans. You can, if I'm labeling all the runs of conduit, obviously that's something that I've got to do over and over and over again. And I can quickly, if I create a custom label, I can very quickly come back and say, okay, well, how long is this one? I don't have to measure it, create the label. It just places it in here for me. Okay, and then select the next one. And that's 18 feet. Place the label. So it makes it to where labeling can become very, very quick. You just select the element, place it, and move on. Same thing with poles. I know a lot of times with signalization and lighting that, a lot of the, we have the boxes that goes around the text that needs to be placed in the file. We'll call it out by the pay item number instead of what it actually is. It's whatever you need to do. Customize your labels with this tool. One thing that you do need to remember with the labeling is that it does not, I repeat, does not honor the annotation scale. This tool was developed years before annotation scale was implemented with MicroStation. So until we can move to Connect, which I'm pretty sure that it does with the labels, we're going to be using something different when we get to Connect. But until then, take advantage of this tool. It's really a good tool to use whenever you've got stations and offsets and links that you need. I know that when I was in design, I used this a lot. Not only for labeling, but also as just a reference. I would pull this tool up and I could very quickly get station and offsets off of anything that I wanted simply by popping in the information over here, double clicking on all the information that I wanted to know about a point, and then snap to it using the tool, and then it would tell me exactly what I had going on at that particular location, whether it was because I needed to label it or if I needed it for the information for something that I was doing in my design work. It's an awesome tool to use. Let me look at any questions. Plan B labeling icon is the last one on the W line. So it's this one. Yay! Which I should have known that because I'm pretty sure it's the same one that Geopack has on their toolbox. One more question. How can we get the baseline symbol? Baseline, it's not 161, it's a different character font number. Send me an email and I will send you, it's just a Word document that has the symbol and what you would need to put into the labeler in order to get that symbol, and I can send it to you. There's also, like I said, there's a posting out on the F.CAD community site. You can get to the community site from the standard menu, the online support form. The labels will have to be adjusted based on the clip view, yes. Basically what you'd want to do when you're placing labels, anytime you're placing labels, you want to put them in the design. That's one place to put them. You can put them in a text LT or SP or SG, whichever one that you're working in. Signals, it's usually easier just to put it in the signals design file. But say for lighting, you can have a text LT file that would reference into your plan sheets and place all of your text in there. And when you get into that file, you want to reference everything in and then rotate your view to your clip borders so that when you clip, it is going to be at the right orientation for placing it. And the only other thing that I will say real quick is, say I wanted to modify the information that's in one of these labels. In order to do that, there is down here on this label control, an edit label, and it kind of works a little funny. Basically, this tool, I want to select a label, and you can read, it gives you prompts down here. I want to select a label, and when I do, it puts that information into this box. Okay, so maybe it wasn't 11, it's 12. All right. In order to update this, it's kind of odd. You place the label, and you can place it on top of it, you can move it, whatever you want to do. But once I place the label, just like I did before with the leader line, what side, it will remove the old label and place the new label. That's why I say you can place it on top of the current label that's there. It's kind of different, because otherwise trying to get into these labels the way that Geopack creates them are like cells. It's difficult to do what you need to do sometimes with these labels using regular MicroStation tools. So go through and checking out all of the different options that they have down here for helping you out. It's definitely a good thing. But down here is the edit label. Makes it a lot easier to edit those. Well, that's it. If there's any more questions that come in the next few seconds, we will get them into the question and answer that will be posted along with the webinar out there on our posted webinar site. So hopefully I will see you all again at 9 o'clock next Wednesday morning.